Good afternoon, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday, June 6th, 2023. I'd like to call to order the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. And we're going to start with our invocation from Larry Seisman. Larry?
No need to stand at this point. I asked Chairman Long for the opportunity to say a few words before I pray for us. For those of you who don't know, my name's Larry Seisman, and I come wearing three hats today. I'm a pastor at Faith Community Church right down the road. I'm also a citizen, a grateful citizen of St. Croix County. I also wear a third hat, is a volunteer chaplain with the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office. Along with 5 others, we stand alongside our deputies and other law enforcement officers in agencies in our counties. We do ride-along, we do death notifications, and just seek ways we can be of aid to law enforcement in the complexities of the world that they navigate, enforcing law among our neighbors. As we're all too painfully aware, these have been trying days for our county, our sheriff, his office, and local law enforcement. It was 4 Saturdays ago that Deputy Lysing, her life was cut short. She took a call on May 6th, a month ago, on behalf of all of us. The sense of loss, the uncertainty, the new level of brokenness that came crashing down on all of us, but law enforcement in particular, is really hard to quantify, and it's substantial. I participated in the gathering that honored Katie and sought to aid law enforcement in their grief at the high school, and the procession that we took from the high school to Baldwin was really, really powerful. I saw faces that were stunned that an event like this could take place in our county. I saw young and old saluting in honor of Katie and those who continue to serve in law enforcement. I saw moms and dads holding their children, instructing them in civics before our eyes. I saw tears running down the face of people on behalf of law enforcement, mixed with the uncertainty that on their faces as they come to recognize that life might not be quite as safe as they previously thought. This procession was solemn, it was sacred, it was heartwarming and tragic. Add to that the officer-involved shooting that just happened this past Saturday in Star Prairie that involved both the Sheriff's Office and New Richmond PD, the one that's still under investigation. These are really difficult days. As one who loves law enforcement, I want to thank you as elected officials and those who serve day in and day out in the administration of the wishes of these officials for the support you've given the Sheriff's Office in this season. You have served them well so that they can continue to serve us well. Your continued and judicious support is a necessity if we're going to see St. Croix County continue in its quest for quality living in a just environment. We need your support. We need each other. That's what government's all about. It's why you exist. It's for the welfare of the people. So toward that end, I ask you would join me in standing as I pray for us as we begin our meeting. God, I'm grateful and humbled to share life in St. Croix County. I'm thankful for those with whom we share roads and schools, hospitals and stores, labor and entertainment. We recognize that we are a fortunate, a blessed people. We don't take these mercies for granted. We're also in a season of uncertainty and pain, and we need your help. We need each other. Our county needs humble, righteous leadership so that we might flourish. I lift up these leaders, elected and appointed, who hold these positions of impact. I ask that you'd keep their egos in check and make their deliberations about the welfare of others. Give clarity of thought and communication so decisions can be made that serve the citizens of our county well. Remove tribal tendencies and replace it with goodwill toward all. As they make decisions that are part of the business of government, may they shun treating people like commodities. May they treat their neighbors with dignity, reflecting the dignity offered to all who bear your image. Equip our leaders for the good of all, including their joy. I ask in Jesus' name, amen.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one
As for roll call, we don't have our electronic clickers as a result of using Zoom, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that all supervisors are present with the exception of Supervisor Otino, who is excused, and just to mention, Supervisor Osnes is joining us via Zoom. Okay, we're going to start off our public comment, and I'd like to invite Steve Schala back with us for another June Dairy Month event. Steve?
Thank you, Chairman. We just had that wonderful invocation. First off, my name is Stephen Schala. I dairy farm with my family down in Pleasant Valley Township. That processional went right by our farm, and we stopped, and what a powerful moment. It's an unfortunate time to bring our community yet together, but that's what we're about here. We're about community, and I think as I come today to simply wish you a happy June Dairy Month, that's really what it comes back to, is just being in community with each other and appreciating our neighbors. Wanted to highlight some of the events in the farming and rural community this summer. And actually, before I do that, one thing I always like to share is just, and again with the spirit of community, that your farming neighbors have open doors. Oftentimes we get this feeling, or we'll hear from people, oh, I didn't know who you were, I didn't know what you did, I didn't know I could come to the farm. And it's like, well, heck yeah, you can. And we really enjoy that. We host the school kids during the year, we host local people, we host international people. It's you get some neat opportunities. So we're busy day to day, call ahead, and we're always happy to find some time to show you around what we do and excuse me, how we do it. But we have a very strong rural community. We have a very involved farming community. And I think some of the events that happened during the summer and throughout the year highlight that. Coming up in July is our annual county fair, July 19th to the 23rd. And there's a big group of volunteers that help put that together from our community. The next one is Farm City Day. Annual tradition that started in 1982. It's an on-farm open house. You can come see tours, come see the animals, come see the crops, lots of games, food, other fun activities. I have a paper over by the cheese tray with the date. It's going to be hosted by the Croix family up near Deer Park this year. That date is Saturday, August 12th, 10 to 2. So hope to see you out there. Another thing I wanted to share is your ag community is very invested locally. I want to highlight one group, the Western Wisconsin Conservation Council. It was a group just started 5 years ago, but we've grown from 5 of us to about 56, including over 50,000 acres of land in the Rush River, Willow, and Kinnickinnick watersheds. And there's a nice report that I left a few copies of. Feel free to glance at that as you have time and interest. So thank you for all you do as elected officials. We'd love to see you at our events this summer and join as one big community. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
We all like the cheese. Next, I'd like to invite Mike Cappers up. I'm sorry?
We'll wait if that's okay. If I may, my name is Brent Johnson. I'm with the Lohman Abdullah firm here in Hudson, and we represent Mr. Cappers. We understand that the matter is on the consent agenda for Mr. Cappers, and if it would remain on that, then we're just going to refrain from further comment. If it was to be separated, we just didn't want to waive the ability to make a couple comments.
If it is separated, I'll allow you to make some comments if it's appropriate if it does get pulled out from the consent agenda.
Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Public comment on any issue? All right, we're going to move ahead to our sheriff's office update. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We have to, the consent agenda. How could I forget? Supervisor Hanson. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, who made the motion? I did. Okay, Supervisor Burning to,
Approve the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, did you say that again, please?
Use your microphone.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I made a motion to approve the consent agenda. Should I withdraw that?
Yes,
I withdraw my motion to approve the consent agenda.
thank you. Supervisor Hanson.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move to split off the rezoning under number 3. It's rezoning number 1, the rezoning from Star Prairie.
And that request is granted. So we will separate out number 3, the rezonings issue, into our business items as number 1. So any motion to approve the consent agenda will be eliminate number 3. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
And second by Supervisor Lind. And is there any objection to a voice vote? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda less number 3, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Now we will move on to the Sheriff's Office update. Sheriff Knutson, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Much of what I was going to talk about, and probably still will, but Pastor Larry kind of encapsulated our last month very well. It has been a long 30 days, starting 1 month ago today with the murder of Katie. So since that time, we've seen a lot of good in our community, a lot of support, a lot of good things that we've seen. You know, from seeing the worst of humanity that day to some of the best of humanity. It is really good for us. You know, our thanks go out to so many within the community. Hudson High School for, you know, their moving schedules around and helping us out with the funeral and the service. So many law enforcement agencies that stepped up to cover all of our shifts. Surrounding counties that came and really embedded themselves in our office for the week. So it was a true community and law enforcement effort, you know, and this on the heels of what Barron County went through. It only exacerbated what this region has been hit with. So we're getting through it. Part of that is a grieving process. Part of that is doing debriefings and employee assistance. All those things have come in handy, and you know, we're told that the marathon begins now. So, you know, as I said in some of my press conference, we hope to retain everybody. We hope to keep our staff. We always hope that. The hiring pool just shrunk a little bit in this region. That's going to be tough for us. So We want to keep our staffing levels. We don't want to put undue pressure, though that reared its head this weekend. So we are, again, making best with what we have, and much of that is from each other and from the community. So we will continue to do what we do, and that serve the citizens the very best way we can, in the safest way we can. We'll continue to train and, respond when needed. So I can, if there's any questions on Katie's event, many have seen the news, but that investigation is actually still being handled by DCI. And that final will go to the district attorney for his review, maybe within the next week or two. That'll be another process that we move through. So, but if there's questions on what we're doing or how we're managing, I can try to answer those. The event itself, we'll probably steer clear of that as well for the time being.
First of all, the whole funeral and procession were so moving, and you did such a respectful and such a wonderful job, and thank you for allowing me to come to the funeral. Have you posted on the website where contributions could be made to Katie's family?
Yes, it is on the website. I think we've got it out on Facebook as well, and it's benefit of Katie Lysing, and that can be dropped off at any Wisconsin bank, credit union. And again, that support has been unbelievable as well. So, thank you for bringing that up. Courtney and Little Siler, we want to, thanks. Any other questions? All right. That got me through the toughest part. Now on to some positive news. So in 2022, I'll throw out some acronyms here, and I'll use the term ICAC as I kind of explain this, but ICAC is the Internet Crimes Against Children. At the end of the year, we were nominated by one of the DCI, Department of Criminal Investigation, one of their agents. We were nominated for the ICAC Affiliate Agency of the Year for 2022. And that award for the agency is given to an agency that has exhibited excellence in all aspects of the ICAC Task Force mission in the following categories: undercover investigations, community outreach, proactive investigations, cyber tip investigations, and victim support. Some of the things that were noted were, when we were nominated, was our willingness to offer support and collaboration with Department of Criminal Investigation as they came in to conduct ICAC investigations within the county. There were several of those. The support of our office, the support that our office lends to other ICAC affiliates throughout, the county, and I believe there's over 300 ICAC affiliates in the state of Wisconsin. And in 2022, we had 29 cyber tips that were assigned to us, 17 to our office, and 12 that went into municipalities or cities. And those resulted in a number of arrests. And there, some of the other comments made were that the investigations were completed with a high degree of self-sufficiency and little need for outside resources due to the investigative competence of the Sheriff's Department's ICAC investigators. One of the other things that they mentioned was of note was the relationship that's been created between the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office. Attorneys within the District Attorney's Office had an excellent understanding of legal matters and law enforcement techniques related to ICAC investigations, much of which is to the credit of the efforts of the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office. For many years, including 2022, the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office offered the highest level of affiliate leadership in the Wisconsin ICAC program and has demonstrated an overwhelming commitment to pursue and arrest offenders that use the internet as a tool to sexually exploit children. Their commitment to the highest level of criminal investigations against these offenders has led to numerous convictions and has directly impacted the safety of the children we serve. So we were nominated, and actually we did receive that award, as some of you may have seen on our Facebook post. Myself, along with a number of other investigators, Chief Deputy Brent Standert, Lieutenant Brandy Hart, Investigator Tommy Williams, and investigators Chris Drost, Sally Standert, Mike O'Keefe, Andrew Dittman, John Schultz Jr., Dusty Geisnes, Mitchell Sheppy, were all recognized for the hard work that was done. And a number of us went down to Madison and received that award. So my hat's off to our investigative group for that heartbreaking but rewarding duty of handling these ICAC investigations. So my thanks to them. And then we had a graduation a couple weeks ago. And I'll bring in our newest addition to our office. If he can swing into here, and we'll kind of pop through here. So this is Canine Murphy and his handler, Josh Pinkos. So Canine Murphy is a 17-year-old Malinois Shepherd mix. And him and Josh just got through 16 weeks of training over in St. Paul. I believe Murphy comes from Hungary, and no pun intended with his food drive. These dogs are now toy-driven and food-driven. So he joins one of 3 others. We have 4 canines now total. And Murphy, some of you will remember in 2019 we had one of our fallen officers from 1953. He was shot, Lee Murphy, and he passed away in 1955. And in 2019 we got him on the wall in Washington, D.C., on the Law Enforcement Memorial Wall. So this Murphy is named after Murphy. So. And Murphy is 17 months, still growing. Once he gets full size, we'll start getting some other items for him that are fitted and will remain with him. And actually, Murphy was purchased through a very generous single donor. And Murphy and his training cost about $15,000. So we're very fortunate to have that donor and all of the support from the community when it comes to our canine programs. So, yeah, I just wanted to show him off. Not often do we get the dogs in here, but the other 3 we're all training today. Next week is their canine certification trials in Washington County. So those 4 will pop the border and get certified to work the streets. I should say recertified to work the streets. But so much has changed over the years with our canines and our programs. So any questions on Murphy and the program? All right. Well, thank you all very much for the support for us, our programs, our people, and the support from the community has been wonderful. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, your show's over.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you for a little good news. We appreciate it. We can all use that. Okay, we're going to move on to our county administrator's report. Ken?
Well, that's a tough act to follow. So the report is through the month of April. If you look at the financial, the percentages, we're right on target. I was going to point out one thing with the, let me shrink this down. With the ARPA projects, one of the projects, I just noticed this today when I was looking at it, but the HVAC project for the healthcare campus has a $155,000 balance remaining. That project is actually done, so that's excess funds. So coming up on the agenda later on is a project allocating some additional ARPA funds, and I said we'd be over allocating because I knew some of them would finish under. Well, there was one, I just hadn't seen it yet. So actually you have, even after the approval of the broadband mapping project, you still have $124,000 of ARPA dollars that are unallocated for anything. So if you guys have any ideas, it has to be a qualified project. It is one-time money. But if you have an idea for that, we would have some additional dollars that are not allocated as of right now. Other than that, I would entertain any questions that you had on the financial report for April.
Supervisor Shirley?
Just a quick question on the KIP fund or projects. I had seen earlier today that there was a small project at the service center up in New Richmond, but I don't see that project on any of our lists. So I just want a clarification on that.
Yep, so it probably falls under the building remodeling project 1001. So generally if they're small projects, we fit it under that. So that building remodeling, furniture, plumbing, it's kind of the routine maintenance type stuff that needs to happen, and we will fit in some smaller projects. I know we moved some doors and stuff up at the service center. I don't know if that was the project that you've seen going on.
It was storage, the remodel of the on the outside of the building.
Okay. You know which one you're taking that? That's the one? Yeah. They're taking that out of there too. I think they're also doing some roofing. They might be done with the roofing out there now. All right. It smells better out there, Bob.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the first business item, which would be the item that was pulled out of the consent agenda regarding amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance section 2 for the town of Somerset. Supervisor Hanson.
Mr. Chair, I move that we send this back to the committee for reconsideration.
And that's a motion to send back to the committee. Do we have a second? Supervisor Van Summeren.
I second that motion.
Okay, so the discussion then needs to revolve around the merits of sending this item back to the committee for further discussion. Any comments?
Right. The reason I'd like to send it back to the committee is because because I'd like the committee to take a chance to send it back to the township, if possible. The vote at the township was extraordinarily close. This is very, very complicated, and with the adjacent property owners making a legitimate petition, I think that they might have a legitimate question that needs to be brought up with the township, not with the county board. We cannot discuss conditional use. It's not within the purview of rezoning. And the questions that are brought up in the letter with the petition all revolve around conditional use, things that we cannot discuss, things that we must not discuss, things that expose the county to legal action if we discuss. This should go back to the township for consideration. We should send this back to the committee, and we should do it delicately and very carefully to avoid action.
I would at least at this point invite either Mike Cappers or his someone speak on his behalf if you have particular comments regarding specifically sending this issue back to the committee.
Yeah, thank
If you can.
Thank you. Again, Brent Johnson with the Lohman Abdo Law Firm, and Mike Cappers is here as well. And I absolutely agree that the issues regarding conditional use permits are not before us today. And the fact is Mr. Cappers has applied for conditional use permits to continue the use that he and his predecessors have used this property for decades, which is basically a campground, tubing, the Apple River Eatery, and occasional music concerts. And so we agree that conditional use permits are really not something that we're here to talk about. And the fact is that the property is currently zoned commercial, and it has been zoned commercial since 1983 by George Sinclair, who was at the time the husband of one of those who has raised concerns regarding the use of the property. Our position is that the conditional uses are going to go before the town board, before the plan commission, they're going to go before the county, and that's all a separate process. And so all we're really asking for today is for approval to rezone to the zoning classification C3, because at the time the property was zoned commercial, that was before we had these modern classifications. And back in 2010, Ms. Sinclair, who has submitted one of the letters of concern, she went and had the property rezoned from commercial with conditions to commercial without conditions. And that classification is something that existed prior but doesn't anymore. And so in talking with the zoning office and the corporation council, they have advised us that in order to continue with the conditional use permit process, we should get it rezoned into the modern classifications. So that's really all we're asking here for today. Totally agree with Supervisor Hanson that the conditions that are placed on permits to operate a campground or an eatery or tubing, that is definitely going to be addressed by the plan commission of the town and the town board. So those are really my comments in response to the supervisors.
Thank you. Other comments and discussion regarding this rezoning issue? Or I'm sorry, the sending it back to the committee for further discussion. Okay, I'm sorry.
Counter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Counter?
I was just wondering if Corp Council or someone would be able to identify the differences between C1 and C3.
I can try, and if I can't, John Hilders is in the audience from Community Development Department if Chair Long would like to call on him. There are certain things that are allowed in the C1 versus C3, and so just for example, the Apple Eatery, which is determined a bar or tavern, that would be allowed in the C3 zoning district as a permitted use. The outdoor entertainment would be allowed in the C3 commercial zoning district with a conditional use permit. The tubing operation, outdoor recreation, is allowed with a conditional use permit in both R1 residential and C3 commercial. And then the campground is a separate issue, not on this parcel of land that's being requested to be rezoned, so I won't address the campground. If that didn't answer the question in full, as I indicated, John Hilders is here if Chair Long would like to call on him at all to answer that question further.
If John would have anything to add, it's up to him. Okay, thank you. Other questions, discussion, comments? Okay, seeing none, then I believe that we're ready to vote on the question of sending the zoning issue back to the committee. And I believe that probably a roll call vote would be most appropriate.
Lind,
No.
Anderson,
No.
Long,
No.
Leaf,
No.
Cook,
No.
Adams,
No.
Burning,
Yes.
Fiedler,
No.
Osnes, Counter,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes?
Shirley,
No.
Telejohn,
Yes.
Carlson,
No.
Barkalow,
No.
Swanepoel,
Yes.
Van Summeren,
Yes.
Ramberg,
Yes.
it's 11-7, no.
11 to 7, no, so that motion does not pass. So the original motion, or the original issue on the floor is regarding amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance, section 2 for the town of Somerset. And at this point, we would need a motion on that issue.
Chair Long, do you want me to explain the statute and the requirement with the protest petition to
That would be a great idea. Thank you.
Okay. So the rezoning is before the county board under Wisconsin statute chapter 59.69. And there is a section regarding rezoning. And so Mr. Cappers filed the rezoning request to change the rezoning from C1 to C3. That was brought before the town board. The town board recommended approval. And so at the Community Development Committee, Mr. Hilgers from Community Development Department explained the rezoning. The general criteria is that the rezoning be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that the rezoning is subject to any applicable requirements under state or federal law. Wisconsin statute 59.69 paren 5 E5G indicates that the process when there's a protest petition. And so before all of you is the 2 protest petitions that were filed by neighbors. And what the statute requires is that if the protest petition is filed with the county clerk at least 24 hours prior to the county board meeting and is duly signed and acknowledged by the owners of 50% of or more of the area proposed to be altered or abutting the property to be altered, then the county needs to determine the authenticity of the ownership statements. And so Mr. Hilgers from Community Development did confirm the authenticity of the 2 petitioners. They own 85.8% of the property, so that is more than 50%. And so because there is a protest petition before the county board, and they are found to be true by the Community Development Department, this rezoning may not be enacted except by the affirmative vote of 3/4 of the members of the board present and voting. And so today there are 18 members present, so in order to pass this, 14 members would need to affirmatively approve the rezoning. And so your options under Chapter 15, Section 15.545 of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances indicates that the county board action should be to adopt the rezoning, refuse to adopt the rezoning, or refuse to deny the petition as recommended by the Community Development Committee and refer the petition back to the Community Development Committee with instructions on how to proceed. So those are the options before the county board today, and we were remiss to take an initial motion as in order to approve the rezone or deny the rezone. We went right to the motion to send it back to committee. So I think that will be the first step, is someone to make a motion to either approve or deny the rezoning request.
And before that, I'd like to ask John Hilgers to come up if I may, just to give us a little more background on what's considered in a rezoning request, just so we have a little more background.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. John Hilgers, planner with Community Development. Beginning in your packet, I believe on packet page 12, and it goes through the next 15, 20 pages. As part of a rezoning, it's required under state statute that the rezoning request be consistent with a local jurisdiction's comprehensive plan. And a comprehensive plan is basically a futuristic document that includes maps, policies, objectives on what the township and the county in this case is anticipating for future growth. So as you go through the report, we cite different references to those planning documents. And based on our review and our findings, we did find that the request was consistent with the comprehensive plans of both the town and the county. And that is a requirement under state statute 66.1001 that any rezonings or zoning amendments be consistent with the local jurisdiction's comprehensive plan. So that's basically the summary of the report. We have more details. Hopefully you had a chance to review it. Corporation Counsel touched on some of it, but if you have more specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Any questions for John? Supervisor Adams.
Chair, thank you. So are we able to articulate the reason why we have these petitions? I mean, what is the issue?
In this particular case, so the issue in this particular case is that the applicant desires to rezone from a C1 to a C3 district that Corp Counsel touched on earlier. And really the difference between C1 and C3 is that C1 is a lesser intense commercial district. It doesn't allow as much retail or intense uses, whereas a C3 includes retail uses, it includes more intense uses that are generating more traffic. So in this case, the applicant is seeking to go from C1 to C3 to expand their list of allowable uses. And as Corp Counsel touched on earlier, we had a grid of different uses. The uses in question is the restaurant and potential bar. Those are not allowed in a C1 district. In order for those uses to be resurrected, they would have to be rezoned to a C3 commercial designation. Again, it's just a stratification of the two different commercial districts.
Thank you.
Other questions for John? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So we are at a point then we need a motion for this rezoning request.
I'll move to approve the rezoning request.
Supervisor Burning, and do we have a second? Supervisor Barkalow. Okay, now we can discuss the rezoning request. Again, we can't get into any use of the property, but strictly the rezoning request. Comments, questions? Supervisor Carlson.
So I am reading the protest, and right in the middle of each of the two protest papers, there's 1 through 8 and 1 through 9. I don't know how we are supposed to know if it's legitimate, if what they're saying is accurate or not. Provides inadequate road access. What did they, number 6 there, what did they use to make that statement? Is it an accurate statement? So that's just my question. To me, it's really hard to tell if this is a legitimate or not protest.
Legitimate or not. John, would you like to address that, please?
Mr. Chairman, board members, we just received the petition late yesterday, as all of you did. So, we had a chance to review the list with other staff members. There are some that do not appear to be accurate, but without going into detail and a little bit more research, I can't address all of them. But with respect to the road question, there is access, if we can go to one of the maps, There is access that serves the property off of 170th Avenue, which runs east-west at the base of the site. That's what they have been using for access for the last couple decades. And that has accessed historically the camping area, the eatery way at the northeast portion of the site, as well as the tubing operation. They have been operating for years. So in terms of access, yes, they do have an access off of 170th Avenue. There are other comments in the petition that talk about spot zoning. The issue before you tonight is not a spot zoning. Because the town had contemplated this land use in their comprehensive plan, they had designated this property for commercial use. So the meaning of that is that they have put thought into this. This is based on their 2015 comprehensive plan. And again, the plans are laid out so that the decisions that are made are not arbitrary or random. They're based on some thought processes that were laid out in the comprehensive plan. But in terms of the other 6 or 7 items, I guess we haven't really delved into the accuracy of those.
Supervisor Counter.
With the existing access that's there, would you consider that a town standard road that's going back there that would suffice for fire and ambulance and all of those types of things, that has access to get to it and meets all the requirements if we're zoning this out as a separate parcel that's being zoned and outlined as a individual property separate from the remaining parcel that has the access lane going through it? Would that be considered a legal access for a commercial entity?
And that would be determined by the town board. You know, as a county, we have standards for county roads. With it being a town access onto a town road, that would be more of a town question. And to maybe pose this a little bit differently for the rest of the board, so if you look at the 41 acres outlined in red on the overhead, the rezoning parcel we're talking about is way in the northeast corner. Again, as mentioned earlier, the reason for the application is to resurrect the uses that were revoked by conditional use permit last year by the Board of Adjustment. So not only do we have the 4.7 acres that are before you tonight, but there are other elements that will have to play into the overall scheme of the property. The campground, the tubing operation, they are proposing outdoor entertainment as part of their anticipated conditional use permit. That road or driveway that you're talking about, board member Counter, would go through those areas to access that very back piece that's subject to the rezoning. So as part of the conditional use permit process, the town and the Board of Adjustment will have to weigh the access standards. They may consult with the local fire district to help with that determination, but that would be forthcoming. So really we're dealing with the rezoning tonight, not the specifics with the conditional use permit. That would be a future application.
Supervisor Counter?
So if I'm understanding you right, you can zone out property and subdivide property and just do it with an access. You don't have to have road connections for commercial or any of that.
It's considered one parcel. You know, we don't have anything in our ordinance that requires rezoning to be its own parcel. So in this case, the parcel would have R1 and C3 zoning. Does that answer your question?
Other questions and comments? Supervisor Hanson.
This is a question for Corporation Counsel. With regard to the pouts, the question that's raised on the petition states that this is something that probably hasn't been answered. If we don't know that the pouts will support the new use, can we Can we set this aside? Can we table it until we know that answer?
I would say no, only because the POUTs would be addressed under any land use permit that's applied for. So, for example, if the board were to approve the rezoning request to C3, the next step for Mr. Cappers to operate a bar or tavern on that site would be to apply for a land use permit through the Community Development Department. The Community Development Department would then go through review criteria that's set forth in Chapter 15 and any other relevant chapters if the property is located in floodplain or shoreland. Those criteria would also have to be met. So any use of the property as, let's say, a bar or tavern, any POUTS systems that would be serving that bar or tavern would have to go through the review process as part of the land use permit application. Again, separate and distinct from the rezoning. The rezoning is just whether or not rezoning from C1 to C3 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the town's future land maps, and whether or not the town recommended approval or recommended denial, separate from the land use permits and the conditional use permits.
Okay, unless there are any other comments or questions, I believe we're ready to vote on the motion to approve the rezoning. On this, we should do a roll call vote, please.
Ramberg,
No.
Van Summeren,
No.
Swanepoel,
No.
Barkalow,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Telejohn,
Abstain.
Shirley,
Yes.
Hanson,
No.
Counter,
No.
Osnes,
No.
Fiedler, Burning,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes?
Leaf,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
and Lind.
Yes.
Twelve to 6.
So the motion to approve fails. All right.
Point of order. I believe Supervisor Telejohn abstained. Wouldn't that be 12 to 5 to 1? Sorry, 11-5. Yes. Sorry. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, we are ready to move on to our next business item, resolution authorizing driveway crossing on the Wildwood Trail. Do we have a motion? Supervisor Hanson?
I move to pass this.
Move to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
And Supervisor Shirley, second.
Right, this is a motion to provide for an easement across the Wildwood Trail so that the property owner will have access to a landlocked piece of property which will allow them to lease this piece of currently agricultural property with an eye towards, in the near future, building residence. Something that we haven't allowed in the past, and the committee felt is giving the property owner better flexibility for their land currently. This is also something that is taking a step toward better relationships with the property owners along the Wildwood Trail, which is, in my opinion, a really good thing. So I would ask you to please approve this.
Comments, questions?
Just one comment.
Oh, one comment. Corporation count?
Yes, so the resolution in the packet was updated based on motions made at the Community Development Committee level. Unfortunately, the agreement that is attached is not the most up-to-date agreement. I did make some language changes consistent with the resolution regarding the 35-foot wide driveway and that the driveway shall be unpaved, and then legal language regarding the exact location of the easement. So just know that the resolution that you're voting to approve is accurate and up-to-date and consistent with the Community Development Committee's motions, but the agreement, there are minor changes, so that's not completely accurate with the most up-to-date version.
Supervisor Hanson?
What's the width that the resolution will have?
35 foot, and the resolution is correct. That would be in line 14 of the resolution.
Very good, thank you.
And it says, St. Croix County desires to permit John Turnerhoy to construct an unpaved 35-foot wide driveway road at grade level. So that was modified to clearly indicate unpaved and change it from 66 feet to 35 feet.
Any questions, comments? I believe a voice vote on this would be appropriate unless anyone objects. All those in favor of approving the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. On to our next business item, resolution amending the 2023 budget to use ARPA funds for broadband mapping project. Supervisor Telejohn.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution amending the 2023 budget to use ARPA funds for broadband mapping project.
And second, Supervisor Adams. Discussion. Who would like to explain this little gem?
In order to proceed with broadband in St. Croix County, I think it's dire need to have accurate maps to know where the dark spots are, where the lines are. I just was with 5 days without landline and internet because somebody cut the line. Now, did they know where it was? I don't know, but maybe a map would have helped, but that situation. But in order to get further funding from the BEAD grants and to make sure we get our accurate funding, we need accurate maps. And I think this is one way to get it. This will map out every household in the St. Croix County.
Can I ask to address the funding issue, Ken? Can you describe that, please?
Yeah, so we have a BEAD grant from the state for $18,000, which leaves us about $35,000 short to complete the mapping project, which is estimated at $53,275. The $35,000 would come from ARPA funds, and as I mentioned during my report, I had anticipated projects would close under budget, and I found one on there that's $155,000 under budget. So even after reallocating $35,000, you still have unallocated ARPA dollars. Broadband projects are ARPA eligible projects. So this falls within line for the ARPA and for the BEAD grant that we currently have available.
Questions, comments? I think we're ready to vote. I believe a roll call vote is required. Since it's a budget amendment, is 2/3 required? I believe so. Okay. See, I learned these things along the way. Okay. Any other questions? We're ready to vote. Christine?
Lind,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Leaf,
Yes.
Cook,
Abstain?
Adams,
Yes.
Burning,
Yes.
Fiedler, Osnes,
Yes.
Counter,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Shirley,
Yes.
Telejohn,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Barkalow,
No.
Swanepoel,
Yes.
Van Summeren,
Yes.
and Ramberg.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, 16-1, thank you. That resolution passes. Okay, we're going to move on to our next item, resolution designating the Office of Corporation Counsel to represent the interest of the public under the Children's Code. Do we have a motion? Supervisor Cook? A second? Supervisor Counter? Oh, we didn't forget about you. Okay, who would like to provide a little background on this? Supervisor Cook?
Sure, I can take this. So essentially, the resolution will be moving the prosecution of the CHIPS cases to the Office of Corporation Counsel out of the District Attorney's Office. I understand this is a caseload issue to kind of reduce the stress on the District Attorney's Office. I believe some of this work will be done in 2023, but the full transfer will happen in 2024 once we have another attorney hired in the Office of Corporation Counsel.
Questions? That's not a question. Supervisor Counter.
My understanding, just to go into it, part of the dealings with this is to help streamline and have the cooperation between Health and Human Services through Corp Counsel versus dealing with the District Attorney's Office. If you can maybe explain that a little bit, and then also the funding of it.
I will do so. Yes, will create efficiencies in the processing of the children in need of protection or service cases. Currently, the Corporation Counsel's Office, we handle the termination of parental rights, which is what happens after a CHIPS case. If children do not receive permanence, we go to terminate parental rights so they can be adopted. This will allow the Corporation Counsel Office to have one attorney that will be the primary attorney on all CHIPS and TPR cases, and they will establish a relationship with Children's Services, be meeting with them every day, and hopefully that will create efficiencies through the court process so these children are receiving permanence quicker, either by ending the CHIPS case or being adopted or some other avenue such as guardianship. So that's the first and primary goal, is to create those efficiencies. There will be some claims that can be reimbursed by the state, and so whatever work either the attorney or the paralegal in our office does on any CHIPS or TPR cases are reimbursed by the state, 27% for CHIPS cases and 40% for TPR cases. And so those, we keep track of our hours, we provide those to Children's Services, they submit them to the state, and the state reimburses then the Children's Services departments for those fees. This will also allow for some funding to be removed out of the district attorney's budget. Currently, they have, I believe it's $35,000 that they utilize to pay for a part-time attorney to handle the CHIPS cases. They won't need that funding anymore because the position will be transferred to the Corporation Counsel Office, so that will alleviate a little bit of the budget reduction to pay for the salary for the attorney in the Corporation Counsel Office. So those are the main funding pieces and our goal for having one attorney handle all CHIPS and TPR cases.
Other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, I also believe the voice vote would be sufficient here unless anyone has objections. Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our last business item, resolution amending personnel policy. Supervisor Cook.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
And second, Supervisor Counter.
This resolution basically is changing the meal reimbursement per diem rates. They haven't been updated since 2014. As we know, things have gotten a little more expensive since then, so we want to make sure our employees aren't losing money as they're going out to do the work. So the reimbursement at daily rates going from $40 per day to $54 per day.
Comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to do voice vote on this as well. All those in favor of the motion to amend personnel policies signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our couple annual department reports. We're going to start out with our treasurer, Denise. You're on.
Thank you, Chairman Long. Good afternoon, everyone. You have my written report. I don't have anything particularly striking to add to that, but I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has one.
Any questions? Okay, wow, you got off easy.
Very good then. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, County Clerk, Christine.
Hello, everyone. My report is in your packet. I also don't have very much to add to it. Couple of things. So 3 out of the 4 people in our office, including myself, is just on our either first or second year in our office, so we're learning a lot. But we did have some things I mentioned at my when I went before the admin committee about mandated services. One of the things that I was hoping to kind of take off our plate was work permits for 15 to 16-year-olds or 15 and under. We're no longer going to be doing those, so that will free up some appointment times as the state is now moving toward parent-only options. So that will be coming up in June. We'll no longer be doing those, which will just free up some more appointment time for more revenue-generating things, work for marriage licenses and passport appointments and things like that. But if anybody has any questions, if they looked over anything in the packet, I'm happy to answer anything.
Any questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Christine. And now we're on to Health and Human Services. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Our report's a little longer. I won't go through it all, though. I think you'll notice if you saw our report last year, it was also about 50 pages, but it was a little more text-heavy. We tried to revise it this year to be more readable, but to also present you with the information we thought was relevant to our department. There's a lot of different service areas, a lot of different programs, and I didn't want to shortchange them by being too brief in our summary of our 2022 year. So we tried to, like I said, we tried to revise this and make it look a little more readable and more, a little easier to understand maybe, and include some pictures and org charts and things that we thought might be helpful to understand the department better. There's a picture. And Colleen in the middle there is really responsible for putting all of this together. When everybody sends her information, she has to organize it and make it look readable. I was just going to mention a few things and then see what questions you might have. In looking at the very beginning, at the financial summary there, you'll notice that most of our revenue comes from grants and billing through Medicaid or third-party billers or third-party payers. In HHS alone, it was, if I can read it from here, and the budget was for $17 million, I think. Yeah, $17 million in 2022 for HHS, and then for the healthcare campus, it was around $9 million, I believe, budgeted for revenue through grants, federal, state, and other grants, and Medicaid and other insurance reimbursement or private pay. And I won't go through the whole report. Let me just kind of summarize what we tried to focus on in 2022. A lot of what you see in terms of expenses, where we go over budget sometimes, is related to those mandated services where we're required to pay whether we have the money or not for children in out-of-home placement or adults in need of protection, for people that go to, say, Winnebago, which is considered an IMD and is not eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. Those folks aren't. So we end up paying these high-cost expenses for people generally in crisis situations or in child protection cases. And in order to try and do something about that, rather than just ask for more money every year or come back and say, we went over budget again in this area, we've tried to really focus on early intervention and upstream solutions that get at why people are ending up in crisis to begin with, or why children are being removed from their homes. And we looked at some new initiatives through ARPA funding that was approved by the board in 2021 to look at how we could partner with law enforcement and partner with the justice services and with community partners to see, really to get at that intersection between public safety and public health, where that same population encounters both, right? The sheriff's office or law enforcement in St. Croix County often encounter those people in crisis or those kids who are in need of child protective services. So we wanted to do something with that ARPA funding that would help us get at those kinds of situations with the idea of removing law enforcement from as many of those situations as we could, or minimizing the time and effort that they had to contribute to transporting people or to dealing with crisis events that maybe they're not as well trained to deal with. So we hired 5 positions through the ARPA funding that the board approved and operationalized those positions in 2022. 2 co-responders with law enforcement, 2 community-based case managers, and 1 position here at the Government Center and Justice Services to work with pretrial cases. Now, we have that funding through the end of 2024, so we're still realizing some of the impact of that. But we're seeing both in, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but we're seeing real benefits from that, both economically and in terms of the social advantages to helping people in crisis before they end up being transported to a distant facility maybe, or kids being removed from the home. And just quickly along those lines with respect to kids and families, I know our Children's Services Division is very focused on trying to keep families united rather than having kids removed from the family. And we've started, in 2022, we've started some efforts with ARPA funding again to work with families on an informal basis at the services center, so they're welcome to come free of charge, get child care, taken care of, free meal, and they receive a evidence-based curriculum on how to currently how to help with concerns around addiction, or how to help with protective factors that help families stay together. And those are facilitated through Family Resource Center in partnership with us. So a lot of these ARPA positions and other efforts that we're making are really intended to be early intervention, upstream solutions to try and reduce those high-end costs that go along with crisis, and also provide, of course, better outcomes for the people that are served. 2022, we had a visit from DHS Secretary Timberlake, who came to our facility in New Richmond and thanked our Public Health Division and our other HHS divisions for the work during the pandemic, which was a nice, and it was a regional sort of thank you, but she came to our facility, so I'm going to take credit for it from our point of view. We also had in 2022 something that I'm forgetting right now, so let me look at the screen. What was I going to say? Oh, a reorganization of service areas. So what we're trying to do is not only look at upstream solutions and those sorts of things in the community, but we're also trying to look at ways in which we can restructure the services that we offer to be more in line with each other, to work better together, to be more integrated, but also to kind of group service areas together that seem to fit together. It's kind of a challenge because the regulations and the funding for each of those programs is different. So it's trying to match puzzle pieces that don't always fit nicely. But that's part of the effort that we're doing in order to not just be more efficient, but to better serve populations that are shared amongst different divisions. And then as far as billing efficiencies, we made a real effort in 2022 to streamline and enforce our billing practices at HHS. Drafted a policy that was a little more specific and a little more, how should I say, forceful maybe in terms of asking people to be compliant with billing requirements, which are oftentimes burdensome. I mean, they're very, again, specific based on regulations and based on what the payer needs from us in terms of documentation. But in order to get the money and get every dollar that we can that's available to us, we're going to continue to make those efforts to be as efficient responsible as we can be with collecting every dollar available. And I'm going to just end with that and see what questions you might have. Had a chance to look at this.
Questions? Somebody's got to have a question. We can't let them off that easy. Okay, I guess not.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. All right, that concludes our department reports for this meeting. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? Okay, seeing none. County clerk's report or correspondence rezoning requests? Okay, announcements. I just got a couple of things I want to review. I think it was 2 months ago at our meeting, I had mentioned the annual report that Adam and Ken and I, well, Adam really worked on. And I had asked for you to kind of review that and provide feedback. So I'm kind of want to re-emphasize that request. It's on our website. And the whole idea was to try to engage the public on what we're doing and where we spend their tax dollars. And I really am interested in your feedback. Please take a look at it. See if you can get your spouse or your neighbors or friends to look at it. Any feedback would really, really be appreciated so we have a better idea of how we might want to move forward with that next year. Just a reminder, there will be no board meeting in July. It happens to fall on July 4th. And then also another reminder, we'll have a committee of the whole on Tuesday, July 18th, and that is at 8:30 in the morning. And I believe the topic will be our capital improvement projects. Okay, any other announcements? Okay, it's 6:17. We are adjourned. Thank you.